We are going to discuss in this module the information you need to know to pass the Part 107 exam, specifically information on pre-flight and maintenance procedure. Maintenance of the drone includes scheduled and unscheduled overhaul, repair, inspection modification, replacement, and system software updates for the unmanned aircraft itself and all the components necessary for flight. It is mandatory that your software be up to date before you execute a mission. Now, in some cases, the manufacturers may recommend a maintenance or a replacement schedule for the drone and other system components based on time in service limits and other factors. Follow all manufacturer maintenance recommendations. However, if the drone or component manufacturer does not provide scheduled maintenance instructions, it is recommended that the PIC establish and review scheduled maintenance protocols. In some instances, the drone or component manufacturer may require certain maintenance tasks be performed by the manufacturer or by person or facility personnel specified by the manufacturer. It is highly recommended that the maintenance be performed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions. If you or the maintenance personnel are unable to repair, modify, or overhaul a drone or component back to its safe operational specification, then it is advisable to replace a drone or component with one that is in a condition for safe operation. If during the course of a pre-flight inspection, you may discover that a drone component requires some form of maintenance outside the scheduled maintenance period. In the event such condition is found, do not conduct flight operations until the discrepancy is corrected. So what are we looking here? Well, we can see the battery on the right is swollen. I found it when I tried to put the battery in the drone and it would not go in. And then I noticed the swelling in the battery. So what should you do? Battery out of service and dispose of in accordance with the appropriate hazardous materials disposal protocol. You are to complete all required maintenance before each flight, preferably in accordance with the manufacturer's instruction, or in lieu of that, within known industry best practice. Document, document, document. If it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. And bring all the necessary documents with you when you are on a mission. I keep my drones in Pelican cases, and behind the top phone, I put all my license tests, waivers, and any other appropriate documentation. Or for the general documentation, I may keep it in my automotive glove box because I always fly out of my own vehicle. Pre-flight, you should have a mission briefing. You should have a pre-flight checklist. You should have a post-flight checklist with your team. You should have this pre-flight mission goal and what is the goal or objective of the flight? Do we need approvals from owners, parks, state, cities, whatever, controlled airspace? Do we know the location, hazardous, and can we plan an appropriate launch site? Preferably, take a visit out to the site before you run the mission so you see it and can study the site to maximize your safety. When is it going to happen? And if you do need to get a waiver, make sure that you have the proper documentation of the waiver approval. You should check weather reports, any issues. If your drone gets wet, it normally, for most drone manufacturers, invalidates your warranty. Wind, know your limits of your drone of how much of a wind it will tolerate. Check NOTAMs and TAFs. How aware? Check sectional chart for issues. Are you required to contact ATC and write down that you have run through some pre-flight and post-flight checklists? What I tend to do in my documentation is I have a pre-flight checklist and I have a post-flight checklist. And when I do the individual flight documentation, I say I perform pre and post-flight checklist as found later in this book. So I don't have to write down all the things that I did. Here is an app for this one, Air Data, that helps me prior to the flight. First page is typically, are there any issues, especially weather issues? The second page is a document of all your past flights and what pictures you took and what was a flight path. Then the next page is a expanded part of the sectional chart, and it will tell you whether there are NOTAMs or something, or what airspace are you in. So if you have to get your LANC approval prior to flying there, and then it does give you some checklists. So what do you talk about with the crew? Well, obviously the mission goal, roles and responsibility, whose role is what are the things that you just cannot do? How are you going to communicate? Cell phones, radios, hand signals, yelling, whatever. What are your contingency procedures for lost link, flyaway, fire, people protection? You do a safety review, and then you are supposed to listen to any improvement feedback from your crew. The FAA has this kind of little acronym, I am safe, and it involves a self-assessment of the PIC and all members of the crew. Are you going to be safe? So you're going to fly below 100 feet. You're going to be VLOS. You're going to make sure you've got the airspace properly. Never fly over people. So this is sort of a part, if not complete, checklist. So before your drone operation, before each and every drone operation, you're supposed to inspect the aircraft for damage or malfunctions. Structure, skin cracking, delamination, liquid spill, strong fuel smell, electrical burning, any strange different sound when it's operating. Are your control inputs working right? Is your battery casing distorted? Is there something going on that your flight time has been diminished? And are you missing screws, bolts, or even pieces from your drone? So you need to keep a log of everything you do. You need to document any repairs, modifications, overhaul, or replacement of a system component resulting from normal flight operations. Record the time in service for that component at the time of maintenance procedure. Assess these records over time to establish a reliable maintenance schedule for your drone and its components. So careful record keeping can be highly beneficial for the drone owners and operators. Consider maintaining a hard copy or electronic of all periodic inspections, maintenance, preventative maintenance, repairs, alterations, firmware updates. Records should include all the components of the drone, including the drone, control station, launch and recovery equipment, data link, payload, any other components required to safely operate the drone. Remote ID comes to mind there, or the strobe for nighttime. So here's kind of a challenge for you before you take your test. Decide how you're going to document. If you are going to hard copy, order a logbook if desired, and enter into that a pre-flight checklist, mission planning, post-flight checklist, any maintenance, repair, firmware updates, and all PIC documentation. So a copy of your license and a copy of any waivers and a copy of your recurrent test results. It is recommended that you have documentation with you when you fly. Law enforcement is allowed to request that documentation. So here is just a logbook that I use and just a couple sheets from a different logbook. So typically there'll be a section where you write down every single serial number, every firmware number, every component, everything that you need or have for your operation. You'll have a section in the logbook. So anything you do in terms of maintenance or software maintenance needs to be logged in there. And then you'll have a per flight entry that includes all the information about the flight. Highly recommend that you number your batteries, and then for each flight, you indicate which battery or batteries you used for that flight.
Things that a remote pilot must do before flying a drone, and it is called a pre-flight checklist. And regardless of whether you're flying recreationally or you're flying a drone commercially, if you miss one of these, you could risk your drone, your footage, or even a hefty fine. What is 14 CFR Part 107.49? This is a pre-flight familiarization, inspection, and actions. This regulation states that before each flight, the remote pilot must do certain things. Now, the very first thing on the list is to review the weather conditions in advance prior to going to the location. Now, the second thing that you must do before you fly is to actively conduct a survey of the site location. This includes the location of people, property, and also obstacles that may cause interference, local airspace, and any flight restrictions to make sure that it is what's called sparsely populated. So that way there are not too many people involved in my operation and I don't have to worry too much about flying over people. And also I'm observing the airspace to see if there are any other remote pilots who are conducting operations at this specific location. And lastly, making a determination as to where it is that my command center, my home base, where will that be in regard to this specific area and location? Number 3, pre-packed materials. Now, you should have inside of your case a drone, remote, batteries, and your certification documentation. I usually keep the physical registration paper within the case of each drone that I own. The FAA allows you to have a physical paper, or you can just keep a photo of it on your phone. Now, the fourth thing that you need to do is to inspect your equipment. This includes your drone, your remote, your batteries, and making sure that you have an SD card installed also. The ideal antenna orientation is generally perpendicular 90 degrees to the direction of the drone. Number 5 is your battery inspection. Now, you notice I have 6 batteries here, so each one of these batteries needs to be inspected separately. And although they are individual, each one represents a total part of the equipment that I possess right now. And it's also recommended that you have them numbered so that way you're using them in sequential order. Number 6, your drone inspection. Now, this is a very important inspection to pay attention to. Propellers, chassis, gimbal guard, and your SD card all determine whether your mission or your flight will be success or failure. Now, I always use a gimbal guard whenever I'm transporting my drone from location to location, but one of the things that you must do is make sure that you remove the gimbal guard before flight. Also, check to make sure that you not only have an SD SD card, but it's inserted correctly. This is all part of your pre-flight checklist, and if you don't have this memorized, then you can always write it down on a piece of paper and keep it with you when it's time to begin your operation. And you can see that I'm unfolding the arms that have the propeller blades attached so I can conduct a visual inspection. And now this is the point where I remove the gimbal guard because I have to conduct a visual inspection of this area also. Now what I'm looking for is anything that may restrict the movement of this gimbal, such as something lodged in the back. So now I'm going to inspect the obstacle avoidance sensors to make sure that there's no dirt and that they're clean, free from any debris. Now if you're flying a drone commercially, regardless of what the drone weighs, you will need to register the drone with the FAA, and that registration number must be displayed on the drone chassis. Now checking the underside of the drone, I want to make sure that all of the sensors are clean, and more importantly, all of the attachments, the mounting screws, and the LED light are all in place properly. Now here's where we come to what many would say is probably the most important part of the inspection, and that is the propeller blades. Now these might seem to be just a cheap piece of plastic, but actually they are not. This is what creates the lift and maneuverability of your aircraft, and you want to make sure that they're not bent, cracked, or broken. And the final inspection here is just to check the overall chassis to make sure that there are no cracks or anything that's loose, damaged, or anything like that. Number 7, I want to confirm my airspace classification. Is authorization required? Are there any temporary flight restrictions, or am I flying in Class G airspace? And you can do this simply by downloading and opening your LANCE application. Number 8, powered on procedures. Now there's a systematic order for doing things, and the first thing that I want to do is be able to make sure that I can insert my battery and check the battery to make sure that once it's inserted properly, that even if I try to force it out physically, that there is no way that it's going to become dislodged when it is in mid-flight. Number 9 is my takeoff and landing pad. Now this is very important because on different surfaces and different terrain, you're going to need something flat where you can take off and land your aircraft. Number 10, power on procedures. And there's a certain order that I usually do this: remote first, drone, look for my GPS, and then establish a home point. Make sure that your display is not indicating that you have to do some sort of calibration or an additional adjustment. And after all of those checks are completed, activate your propellers, and now you're ready to lift off. Now I hope this checklist was useful and provided you with some helpful information.
Please like and share so you can review the additional modules on the information you need to pass your Part 107 test. Good luck. Thank you.